This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Algeria has announced the fact that the UN mission for a referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, still does not have a mandate related to human rights, unlike other similar missions. And in Gaza, 62 people were killed today in Israeli bombings targeting several parts of the enclave, and the UN decided to reduce the size of its international team in Gaza after renewed Israeli attacks on the Palestinian territory. A member of the Russian delegation has described talks between Russia and the United States as challenging but useful, and the United Nations and other countries will be involved in additional discussions. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. I'm Asia Bakar. Good afternoon. Algeria has announced the fact that the United Nations mission for referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, still does not have a mandate related to human rights, unlike other similar missions. Mr. Shafit tells us more.
At a UN Security Council meeting dedicated to improving the adaptability of UN peacekeeping operations to new realities in New York, Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar bin Jama, said that while some partners frequently emphasize the need to monitor human rights and uphold international law, their silence or even opposition regarding MINURSO's lack of a human rights mandate is striking.
For a long time, we have been lectured on many occasions by some partners on the strategic importance of human rights monitoring, as well as the need to uphold international law, including international humanitarian law. But curiously, when it comes to MINURSO, for example, we have been surprised and astonished by their silence.
Mr. bin Jama has also drew attention to this anomaly that specifically affects MINURSO.
This attitude sent the message, the signal that MINURSO as a strange exception among all UN peace operations deployed in Africa should simply turn a blind eye to the human rights situation in the territory.
Mr. bin Jama stressed the need to equip all UN peacekeeping operations without exception with a strong human rights component to improve the work of UN missions on the ground by monitoring and reporting violations. Finally, Mr. bin Jama reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to supporting the work of UN peacekeeping operations by making its expertise in peacekeeping and international security available to the UN and the international community.
The Minister of State, Minister of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arkab, has affirmed from Addis Ababa Algeria's readiness through the Sonatrach Group to support Ethiopia in the development of its energy sector, particularly in the exploration and exploitation of oil and gas. Jamal Salmani has more.
As part of his official visit to Ethiopia, Mr. Arkab held talks with Ethiopian Minister of Mines, Habtamu Tigigni, in the presence of Sonatrach CEO Rashid Hashishi and Sonalgas CEO Murad Ajel. The two parties examined joint investment opportunities in oil and gas exploration and development in Ethiopia, particularly in promising regions such as the Ogaden. Mr. Arkab expressed Algeria's readiness to provide technical support and training to the Ethiopian side to strengthen its capacity in this area, stating that Sonatrach has advanced techniques and high-level skills to support Ethiopia in the development of its energy sector.
We tackled several cooperation topics, notably in the fields of fossils, from exploration to development, exploitation, transportation, conversion, and marketing.
Ethiopian Minister of Mines, Habtamu Tigigni, for his part, hailed Algeria's extensive experience in the hydrocarbon sector, expressing his country's will to benefit from Algeria's experience in mining resources. It was agreed to activate the joint working group to develop a clear roadmap for future projects.
And now to the Middle East. In Gaza, at least 62 people have been killed and several others injured in the last 24 hours in Israeli bombings of homes and towns of displaced people in several parts of the enclave. This came while the United Nations has announced that it will be reducing the size of its international team on the ground in Gaza after renewed attacks on the Palestinian territory by Israeli forces killed hundreds of civilians.
Since the occupation resumed its war of extermination on March 18, more than 750 citizens have been killed and approximately 1,400 others injured, most of them children and women. Israeli warplanes used drones and artillery to target homes, facilities, hospitals, displaced persons' tents and vehicles. This comes while the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, announced that 124,000 people have been displaced from the Gaza Strip in just a few days due to the ongoing Israeli bombardment, while simultaneously calling for an end to the blockade imposed on Gaza. UNRWA said in a post on its X platform last night that 124,000 people in Gaza have been displaced in just days, forced to flee relentless bombardments. Families carry what little they have with no shelter, no safety, and nowhere left to go. It added that the Israeli occupation authorities have cut off all aid, leaving food scarce and prices soaring, describing the situation in the Strip as a humanitarian catastrophe. Meanwhile, the UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric condemned the Israeli striking of UN buildings in Gaza, calling for holding the Israeli occupation accountable.
As you know, in the past week, Israel carried out devastating strikes on Gaza, claiming the lives of hundreds of civilians, including United Nations personnel, with no humanitarian aid being allowed to enter the Gaza Strip since early March. As a result, the Secretary General has taken the difficult decision to reduce the United Nations footprint in Gaza, even as humanitarian needs soar and our concern over the protection of civilians intensifies. We are not leaving Gaza. I repeat, the United Nations is not leaving Gaza. We remain committed to continuing to provide aid that civilians depend on for their survival and for their protection.
Let's recall that last Tuesday, the Israeli occupation resumed its airstrikes on the Gaza Strip in violation of the ceasefire agreement reached on the 19th of December.
And still with the Palestinian issue, separate Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip have killed 2 media workers. Hussam Shabbat, a journalist who worked for Al Jazeera, was killed in northern Gaza on Monday after his car was targeted in the eastern part of Beit Lahia. Earlier on Monday, an Israeli attack on Khan Yunis in southern Gaza also killed journalist Mohammed Mansour, who worked for Palestine Today. Journalist Mansour was killed in his house alongside his wife and son. The European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy has said that the Zionist aggression against Syria and Lebanon risk provoking a new escalation in the region. Speaking at a France conference in occupied Al-Quds, where she's visiting, Ms. Kayas stressed that the Zionist entities' attacks on Syria and Lebanon are not necessary and risk provoking a new escalation.
However, military actions must be proportionate, and Israeli strikes into Syria and Lebanon risk further escalation. The fundamental steps here are restating the ceasefire, ensuring the release of all hostages, and resuming the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza with the goal of a permanent ceasefire. The European Union can help, whether through restating our Rafah border crossing mission or providing more humanitarian assistance. It is hard to look forward when bombs fall, but we need to keep the hope alive. The EU welcomes the Arab plan for reconstruction of Gaza.
That was the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. To South Sudan, UN Special Representative of the Secretary General for South Sudan, Nicholas Haysom, has warned and said that the country is teetering on the edge of a relapse into civil war. Addressing the press, Mr. Haysom said that the political and security situation has deteriorated.
As you're aware, the political and security situation has significantly deteriorated since the White Army, that's the youth militia, overran barracks previously occupied by the South Sudan People's Defense Forces in Nasir on the 4th of March. In retaliation, communities across Upper Nile are being subjected to persistent aerial bombardment using devices, barrel bombs, allegedly containing a highly flammable liquid that acts as an accelerant on explosion. These indiscriminate attacks on civilians are causing significant casualties and horrific injuries, especially burns, including to women and children. Our humanitarian partners assess that at least 63,000 people have fled the area.
According to Mr. Haisum, the region and the international community have been actively engaged, highlighting that the collective message of the region and the international community is the same. There is only one way out of the cycle of conflict, and that is to return to the revitalized peace agreement in letter and spirit. To Congo now, the joint summit of the heads of state and government of the East African Community and Southern African Development Community decided to speed up the peace process by appointing an enlarged group of 5 facilitators to resolve the crisis in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The meeting also adopted a report by the two bodies' ministers, which outlines the steps towards a ceasefire, a cessation of hostilities, and the establishment of a secretariat to monitor its implementation. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and now a member of the Russian delegation has described talks between Russia and the United States as challenging but useful, and the United Nations and other countries will be involved in additional discussions, as he put it. He said everything was discussed, stressing that talks would continue and that the United Nations and other unidentified countries would be involved in them. You still listen to Radio Algeria International, and today we take a moment to remember and reflect on history that shaped our world, the transatlantic slave trade and its lasting impact. This is not just about the past, it is about understanding how its echoes still influence our present. Through remembrance, we honor the millions who suffered and recognize the resilience of those who fought for freedom. So stay with us as we explore the significance of this day and why remembering it is a step toward justice, with a program compiled and presented by Mr. Sharfi.